Hello, everybody. Welcome to the last Hands-on Agile webinar of 2018. I'm your host, Stefan Wolpes. Today, we will talk about one of the essential opportunities for inspection and adaptation, the Sprint Retrospective. Let's start with a look at the manual. According to the Scrum Guide, the retrospective is an opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements for the next sprint. The Sprint Retrospective occurs after the sprint review and prior to the next sprint planning. The Scrum Master participates as a peer member in the meeting from the accountability over the Scrum process point of view. The Scrum Master is not merely facilitating the retrospective. The purpose of the retrospective is to inspect how the last sprint went with regards to people, relationships, process, and tools, to identify and order major items that went well and potential improvements, and to create a plan for implementing improvements to the way the Scrum team does its work. The Scrum Master encourages the Scrum team to improve within the Scrum framework. For example, how to increase product quality by improving work processes or adapting the definition of done, if appropriate, and not in conflict with the product or the organizational standards. So, this is important to stress. There is no rogue Scrum. Improvements follow the Scrum Guide and are in compliance with organizational standards. Although improvements may be implemented at any time, the Sprint Retrospective provides a formal opportunity to focus on inspection and adaptation. As Jocko Willink tends to say, discipline equals freedom, reducing the cognitive load by having a rule. And this is the main purpose of the retrospective. Of course, if you can change something on the spot, you will not wait 2 weeks or 4 weeks to voice your opinion and actually make a suggestion. So let's start with the Sprint Retrospective anti-patterns of the Scrum Master. Number 1, skipping retros. All Scrum events are essential for a team's success. You cannot just skip an event. There are 2 forms of skipping retrospectives. Number 1, you don't have retrospectives at all. There is no retrospective as the team believes there is nothing to improve. I believe there is no such thing as an agile nirvana where everything is just perfect. As people say, becoming agile is a journey, not a destination, and there is always something to improve. The second variation of the skipping retros is that the retrospective is used as some kind of dispensable buffer. The team cancels retrospectives if more time is needed to accomplish the sprint goal. The retrospective as a sprint emergency reserve is a common sign of cargo cult agile. I believe this is even a worse anti-pattern than not having a retrospective in the first place because everyone believes that the team is just working in a perfect manner. However, randomly canceling the retrospective to achieve the sprint goal is a clear sign in my eyes that the team does not understand basic agile principles, such as continuous improvement. If the Scrum team repeatedly does not meet the sprint goal, it should expect what is going on here and guess which Scrum ceremony is designed for exactly that purpose. Number 2, the postponed retrospective. Scrum Master postpones the retrospective into the next sprint. Beyond the inspection and adaptation aspect, the retrospective shall also serve as a moment of closure that resets everybody's mind so that the team can focus on the new sprint. This is the reason that we have the retrospective before the planning of the next sprint. Postponing the retrospective into the next sprint will probably interrupt the flow of the team. There's an additional cognitive load, there's context switching, and it will also probably delay the tackling of possible improvements. Number 3, let's keep the retro short. So this is the rushed retrospective syndrome. The team is in a hurry and allocates much less time than the minimum 60 to 90 minutes for a retrospective. By the way, the time box for a retrospective is 3 hours for a month-long sprint. Shortening the retrospective is a slippery slope and may probably end up with a ritualized ceremony of little value. Most team members will likely regard it as a waste of time sooner or later, and then you probably end up with having none at all. Number 4, Groundhog Day. The retrospective never changes in composition, venue, or length. In this case, the team will likely revisit the same issues over and over again. It's Groundhog Day without the happy ending, though, an empty ritual. What you can do to prevent Groundhog Day retrospectives from happening is simple. Create a repository of exercises for all 5 stages and never run the same retrospective twice. If you need ideas, use RetroMark, tasty cupcakes, or be creative with liberating structures or training from the back of the room. It's also a good idea to talk to your fellow Scrum Masters in the organization. And if you're a lonesome Scrum Master because you're the only one in your organization, you may want to join the Hands-on Agile Slack community, which is an excellent place to get some inspiration from other people. A very simple idea would be just to simply change the venue. Or why not theme the retrospective? For example, a Halloween retrospective always works fine in my experience. Number 5, the blame game. The retrospective is an endless cycle of blame and finger pointing. The team wins together, the team loses together. The blame game is a typical sign for a team not being a team, but rather a group of individuals. They're probably not collaborating, they're merely cooperating at best, probably even not just coordinating well. So the blame game documents both the failure of the Scrum Master as a facilitator, as well as the team's lack of maturity and communication skills. What can you do about it? Revisit the Scrum values: commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect. Without them, transparency, inspection, and adaptation cannot work the magic. If the Scrum values are a challenge, create, for example, a skill radar for the team and just track how Scrum values are developing over time. Number 6, manager alert. The Scrum Master permits stakeholders to participate in the team retrospective. No need to say that psychological safety to address the elephant in the room will not be created this way. While I do see necessity that stakeholders want to communicate with the team, there are alternatives. For example, run a separate overall retrospectives with stakeholders at your regular cadence. There are also other Scrum ceremonies that address the communication needs of the stakeholders. Foremost, of course, the Sprint Review, but also the Scrum product backlog refinement is well suited, and maybe even the daily Scrums, not in the sense that they ask questions during the daily Scrum, but they can stick around and ask a team member one or two things afterwards. Finally, there are plenty of other opportunities of having conversations at the water coolers over a coffee or during lunchtime. There's absolutely no need that managers should be, or stakeholders should be present during the team retrospective. And I believe that the team should refuse to participate in such if that is supposed to be a team retrospective and not an overall retrospective. Number 7, line manager alert. The line manager of one or several team members participates in the retrospective. This is the worst anti-pattern I can think of. It turns the retrospective truly into an unsafe place. I mean, who would respect that an unsafe place triggers an open discussion among the team members? Any line manager who insists on such a proceeding signals his or her lack of understanding of basic agile practices. There are 2 tricky situations that come to mind. Number 1, if you're a small product delivery team at a startup and a team member also serves in a management function or is a founder, retrospectives might be challenging. In this case, consider hiring an external Scrum Master to facilitate those, at least from time to time. Tricky situation number 2, the line manager is one of your team members and also serves on the team. My suggestion in this case, avoid the situation at all costs. The promotion of a team member means that the individual probably also needs a new team. There is no purposeful retrospective if one team member decides over bonuses or promotions of other team members. Number 8, product owner NonGrata. The product owner is not welcome at the retrospective. This is truly a simple anti-pattern. The Scrum Guide refers to the Scrum Team having a retrospective, and this, of course, includes the product owner. The second part of the webinar deals with Sprint Retrospective anti-patterns of the Scrum Team. Number 9, prisoners. Some team members only participate because they are forced to join. Well, don't pressure anyone to take part in a retrospective. The law of 2 feet applies for retrospectives too. Instead, make participating in the retrospective worth their time. The drive to continuously improve as a team needs to be fueled by intrinsic motivation, neither by fear nor by order. My tip, RetroMart's Why Are You Here exercise is a good opener for a retrospective from time to time. You can this way easily figure out who actually wants to be there and who feels like a prisoner. If some team members consider the retrospective to be of little or no value, it is most often the retrospective format that sucks, which is applicable to the Scrum Master, of course. Is it the same procedure every time, ritualized and boring? Just think of the Confluence retrospective template. So have a meta retrospective on the retrospective itself. Change the venue. Have a beer or wine-driven retrospective in the evening. There are so many things the Scrum Master can do to make retrospectives great again and reduce the absence rate, as long as you don't force people to participate. Number 10, someone snitches. One of the participants sings and provides confidential information from the retrospective to an outsider. I do believe that for retrospectives, the Vegas rule applies. What is said in the room stays in the room. There is no exception from this rule. The reason for this is again simple. Snitches kill psychological safety, and there will never be trust among the participants, which renders the exercise almost obsolete, or at least waters the effect, the outcome down significantly. Number 11. Pro forma action items. There are 3 issues surrounding action items. The kind of action items, who's owning them, and are you following up? Let's go through them step by step. Number 1, the team picks UNSMART action items. Bill Wake coined the SMART acronym for reasonable action items: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-boxed. If the team picks unsmart action items, though, it sets itself up for failure. Example, we want to change the bonus scheme of the company. Good luck achieving that goal during the next sprint. Number 2, there's no owner. No one was chosen to be responsible for the delivery of an action item. If the team is supposed to fix issue X, probably everyone will rely on his or her teammates to handle it. Make someone responsible instead. Number 3, no follow-up. The team does not check the status of the action items from the previous retrospectives. The sibling of autonomy is accountability. If you are not following up on what you wanted to improve before, why care about picking action items in the first place? By the way, at least one high-level item is supposed to be a part of the next sprint and should be on your sprint board as well. Number 12. There is no adequate place available to run retrospectives. The least appropriate place to have a retrospective is a meeting room with a rectangular table surrounded by chairs. And yet it is the most common venue to have a retrospective. Becoming agile requires space. If the space is not available, you should become creative and go somewhere else. If the weather is fine, grab your stickies and go outside. Or rent a suitable space somewhere else. And if that is not working, for example, due to budget issues, remove at least the table so you can sit, stand in a circle. Just be creative and avoid the classic meeting room for that purpose. Let's summarize the 10th webinar on Scrum Retrospective Anti-Patterns. We started with skipping retrospectives or postponing retrospectives or keeping retrospectives short, not allocating enough time to actually handling them in a proper way. We continue with Groundhog Day. Everything is the same all over. The blame game. The Scrum Master allows stakeholders and managers to participate in a team retrospective. Or even worse, the line manager of one or several team members participates in the retrospective. You exclude the product owner from the retrospectives. Or people are forced to participate in the retrospective instead of volunteering to join the effort of the team to become continuously better. Someone snitches and shares confidential information with someone else, mainly the management. The team picks pro forma action items. They can be unsmart, there's no owner, and there's no follow-up. And last but not least, the facilities to actually host a retrospective are not very well suited for the kind of event that is going to take place. So that was the last webinar for 2018. Thanks a lot for your patience and participating in today's webinar. We will, of course, make this replay available on the YouTube channel. And if you like to join us next time, that will be on January 29th, 2019. Then we will be talking about Daily Scrum anti-patterns. See you until then. Bye-bye.